1970, we sure we did the forefront. Knowledge for self-peace, for sure we did the work. Auditorium to basement of all faculty of law. We did represent, stand tall anywhere we go. We work hard and we shine, commitment, dedication. Neurosurgery, comedy, music, Nollywood. SOTK, Dr. Call, MC Casino. We did represent, stand tall anywhere we go. Great Uniben, great Uniben, great Uniben, great Uniben.
Hello viewers, welcome to another episode of the Uniben Alumni Series. As you know, this is a show where we celebrate alumni of the great University of Benin while also promoting the institution, the University of Benin. On this episode, I have a man who has done a lot for sports, especially in the institution and outside the institution, outside Benin. He's currently the Dean, School of Physical and Health Education and Special Education at the Edo College of Education, Afuze Campus. He's a former director of sports, Student Union Government, University of Benin. He's a man of several other progressive paths, but during the course of the conversation, the interview, you get to know. He's Dr. Abdulrasheed Oyakhire. Thank you very much, boss, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much, my viewers. It's a pleasure to be part of this program.
Thank you. Sir, we'll start off from here. You have a PhD, you have a Doctor of Philosophy in Sports Management, and you also you're a sporting director of a football club. So let's talk about, can you share with us what inspired you to pursue a career in sports management?
Thank you very much. You see, University of Benin is one institution that I would say opened up the frontiers of the horizon for me. Because unlike most of my contemporaries who came into physical and health education department as it then was, they later health education and environmental education and human kinetics, and currently it has metamorphosed into human kinetics and sports science. Unlike most of them who came into that department by virtue of not meeting up with the cutoff of their choice courses.
Yeah.
I, for one, I chose physical education even at the JAMB entry level.
Okay.
Yes, that was what I put in at my post-training. And what happened was, I had a contact with a man who was one person that was respected when it comes to physical and health education in Benin, as far as school sports was concerned, the late Mr. John Ogushola. He was my PE master, and there was this particular connection I saw in him, which drew me close to him in the way and manner he organized sports, and it made sports endeared to me. And it was based on that when I was putting in for my O level, I told myself that I was going to study sports in the university.
Oh.
Because at that point in time, I actually saw some of his products in the then Edo Grammar School, who later became the pride of the nation. People like Greg Henoba, people like even the man who represented Nigeria in the Sydney 2000 Olympics. He was a product of his program, Bright Igbinadolo. Then we had the likes of great persons who have represented the nation, even in football, in athletics, too numerous to mention. And of late, one who was even my classmate, who was also a product of his program too, Osuchukwu Chidebere. He played with Edase Echejile in Portugal. So he, from the onset, planted that seed of sports in me. And when I got to University of Benin, I saw, like my contemporaries who saw the department as the last resort, I saw it as a destination for me to the future. So that was what part of what inspired me into contesting at 200 level for the director of sports of the student union.
Okay.
And yes,
We'll talk about that as we proceed. I want to ask, you said you've made up your mind, you had your choice made up for you to study sports at the university.
yes.
How did your parents accept it? Because in where we are from, in the part of the world where we are from, that is not a course that our parents would really endorse for us to go into the university and study. What was the reception from your parents when you told them that?
Yes, you see, because of the state of our grassroots sports today, many persons, including parents, are not actually aware of the career opportunities in studying physical and health education as it then was then, now sports science.
Yeah.
And when I broke the news to my mother, who then was just a trader, that I was going to study physical and health education, and she said, of all courses in university, you burnt the night candle, went for lectures.
Yeah.
You were almost practically starving yourself because you wanted to make the cutoff for post-UME, and you want to go and just waste it in studying how to play table tennis and football. Yes, I convinced her why I needed to. That was what I had passion for.
Yeah.
She said, you are intelligent. Unfortunately, I was even the president of JETS Club, Junior Engineers, Technician and Scientists organization. It's like a scientific club at the secondary school level. I was the president in Edo State at that time. So contemporaries will naturally expect me to be drawn towards engineering, to be drawn towards medicine, but not a president who would be presumed to be one of the best science students in the state at that time to go and end up in the faculty of education. But I tell you, today I am always proud of that decision. If I have to make that decision again, I will still make the same decision of going to physical and health education.
Yeah, that's encouraging to hear. You have, if I'm correct, kindly, if I'm not correct, kindly correct me. You have 4 degrees from the University of Benin. Your Bachelor of Education, you have MSc in health education.
No, sports management.
Sports management.
Sports management.
Human resources. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the one I just completed now.
Okay.
Though my result is not out yet.
Yeah. So that's 4 degrees. So was it out of convenience for you to acquire all these degrees from Uniben, or was it a case of I have the best within my locality? Why will I go outside?
Yes, like you have rightly said, it was a case of the best around this locality. It was not a case of convenience. Because let me tell you one fact. Upon my travels around the world as regards the discipline of sports management or human kinetics in general, I have come to discover that some of the teachers I came across in the course of my study in University of Benin could be compared to some of the best around the world. Like I have one of the pioneer students of physical and health education of the University of Nigeria, one of the pioneer students who learned from those we call the ancestors of our discipline today, the person of Professor S.M. Adado. And I also was also tutored by one of the pioneer students of this same department in the University of Benin, the person of Professor Samuel Obeseriabuiku. So you find that it is some of the time it is that familiarity that will make students not to cherish their homegrown tutors. But for me, I have come to appreciate the fact that University of Benin houses some of the best when it comes to human kinetics and spawn science in Nigeria today. I was drawn, if I have to even go back again to turn the hand of the clock again, I will still choose University of Benin
Okay.
as my alma mater.
All right. Let's talk about the attributes you took from the institution. We'll talk about your tenure as director of sports. But this time around, what are those things that you took from the institution? Today, you are a dean of a school in a tertiary institution somewhere else in those states. So, what are these attributes that you took from Uniben that is helping your day-to-day activity, and also that is helping you in your role as dean today, in your position as dean today?
Yes, you see, one of the gifts that University of Benin gave to me, which I'll forever cherish, is that ability to adapt yourself to every situation you find yourself, as well as that mental ruggedness. I've had cause to interact, to meet with persons of different social backgrounds, religious backgrounds, economic backgrounds, while I was a student of the University of Benin. And in all of these interactions, it created that ambience for me to adapt to every situation I find myself. You know, University of Benin is a multicultural society. So if you can survive in University of Benin in terms of culture, in terms of religion, in terms of social inclinations, then you can survive in any part of the world. Then, importantly, that mental ruggedness. Today, I have learned to approach every endeavor with that mentality of a Uniben alumnus that I can do it. So, like Professor Erege said in his inaugural lecture, that you program the end from the beginning.
Yeah.
So it is that mentality that University of Benin gives to you, that you already know the end from the beginning. So you are already mentally prepared that whatever challenge that comes your way in the course of the sojourn, you are able to navigate it.
Yeah, I quite agree with you. Uniben has molded us in a way that we can survive anywhere.
Anywhere in the world.
Yes.
I'll give you a scenario. Even in terms of feeding habit, for example, as a young undergraduate, when I was coming to University of Benin, there were some food, our local delicacies that I don't find myself eating. But you see, especially when I start interacting with colleagues, with friends from Hofo or 3, I found myself that living in University of Benin today, there's no food I cannot eat. Yes.
Yeah.
Even when I travel abroad, sometimes when they bring these delicacies that look like that are somehow to an African man looking awkward. But as far as it doesn't kill them, it cannot kill me, which is the mentality of a University of Benin alumnus.
Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about your time as student, SUG director of sports. Your election, it can be adjudged as one of the most keenly contested election in recent era.
A controversial election.
Highly controversial.
Yeah.
You contested against one of our friends, Emmanuel David, and Bezlas was known then. And a lot went on, from the election to the announcement to how you emerged. It was quite something that was on the lip of every university as a day.
Of course.
Through the journey, what made you to contest for the position? As you have said earlier, you contested in 200 level.
Yes.
Yes. what gave you that motivation to contest one? And how was the journey like? The campaigns, moving from halls of residence to the other, then to the main election. Just take us through that process.
Thank you very much. You see, that era is one phase of my life that anytime I try to have a retrospect, I would just laugh and thank God for the lessons, thank God for the persons, because there are some persons I met in the course of that election today, University of Benin, that have become like family to me. You understand? You see, at while I was in the 200 level, it was in the first semester. I was already involved in the hostel games in the evening. We were the ones that tagged that pitch in the hotel then as Maracana Stadium. Unfortunately, I was one of the persons who was a regular attendant in that pitch. Most of my evenings I spent it in that field. So, and I was part of the organization of football, officiating. In fact, that's an aspect that most people don't know, that it was that field that took me into refereeing today, wherein I'm also now a referee's assessor of the Nigerian Football Federation. So that same small pitch in O3, that was my beginning. So while we were there one evening, we got message that on the notice board that forms for the election to the student union government was out.
Yeah.
And I can remember one of the hall mayor then, Mr. Agogo, they called on me and said, Rashid, don't you think you are qualified for this position? I said, Agogo, I'm just a 200 level. Then fortunately, that evening, the then director of sports, Dr. Kingsley, Dr. Kingsley, I think he's a lecturer now in the Faculty of Education.
Yes.
Also met me.
Manager. Yeah.
Yes, we call him manager.
Yeah.
Also met me and said, Rashid, come. You have all it takes to succeed me. If I have looked around, the only person I can see now is you. Why don't you go and take form? I said, 200 level. I said, first of all, where will I get the money to print the posters? Because I was coming from a very humble background. But I knew the congress that took place in my father's parlor to raise the school fee in my 100 level. So I was coming from a very humble background. I said, how do I fund the posters? How do I fund the campaign? And you know, that election was just the election that was coming after the election of Prince Harrison Ehimiye. And I saw the kind of campaign that took place. that was another keenly contested election.
Yeah.
They said I should go ahead. That if I believe in a thing, I can do it. I said, okay, no problem. So that afternoon, I gathered some of my friends. I gathered my friends from the class. I said, we are going to student affairs. So we trekked from education to student affairs. That's somebody that wants to contest director of sports, cannot even pay for cab. So we trekked from education to student affairs. And we purchased the form and filled it, was done with the submission, and the next phase was the security clearance. And I remember the then deputy CSO, who was in charge of clearance there, one Dr. G now, said, young man, you are quite young, and who advised you to contest as an executive of the student union? Don't you think you should be contesting now as director of sports of your department, perhaps your faculty, not SUG? I said, sir, an idea will only materialize if people believe in it. And also, there's a popular quote there that now became our philosophy, that no army in the world can stop an idea whose time has come.
Yeah.
I said, I think the idea of my emergence has come now. So it is time for me to emerge. And the man said, I love your courage. I love your resourcefulness, but I am still worried because you are looking quite young. I said, no problem, sir. Just pray for me. And I left his office. Suddenly, after the screening, I was cleared. We did the campaigns, midnight, going to reading rooms, faculties, hostels. But I remember on one occasion when I went to Hall 2, I was asked by a student in Hall 2 that if I want her to vote for me, I should join her in eating her indomie that evening. That because to her, I was perceived to look to be shy. I said, no problem. We ate, and after the last spoon, she said, I will vote for you. I said, no problem. And the day of the election was also an interesting one because I was contesting with Emmanuel, like you know, Embezzler, who was a 300 level, a year ahead of me, and was already a household name in this politics of University of Benin. And fortunately for me, I also had somebody who was also contesting from that same faculty, who in the coming years turned out to now also become my in-law. I ended up marrying my younger sister. So you could see that the politics of University of Benin, beyond the competition it brought to us, it also made us become family. So the election day came. University of Benin came out en masse to decide the fate of all of us. And truthfully speaking, I think my faculty did well enough to give me a margin that was difficult to match by any of the aspirants. Because when my faculty was counted, I was already leading with almost about 200 votes. And the deciding vote, fortunately, was now in the Faculty of Sciences. Your last episode, I saw Alabi Cynthia, and I just smiled because it was that election that made us become friends. Because they were rooting for the first female candidate of the SCG elections, University of Benin, who later turned out to become the first president of the student union, female president, Chinelo Elio Dimo. So, and fortunately, I was in their campaign. So the deciding election was the Faculty of Sciences, where she was coming from. And I remember my friend, who I also turned a brother today, Usa Asago, told me we should go to science. That is the last vote that is left. And upon counting, I remember that evening, my agent came out and showed me the results. I was now leading with 98 votes. So the next onus was now resting on the Dean of Students to announce, to return me elected. And fortunately, while I was in my room trying to rest from the rigor of the day of election, a classmate of mine, I think Ramon, rushed into my room and said, Rashid, they say you lost the election by the same margin in which my agent reported that I won the election. And I rushed out. Behold, the list that was released by the State Affairs that night declared my opponent as elected. I immediately called all my agents. And you know one thing about University of Benin, it prepares you for the secular politics. That was the first time I knew the importance of party agents in an election.
Coalition.
I assembled all my agents, and they brought their result sheets for me. And I will forever be grateful to University of Benin because there are persons that I met in the course of my sojourn, and they showed some of the skills that today has set them aside from their contemporaries in their disciplines. I remember there was a young man who graduated from EcoStat. He was an economics student. Immediately, he gave a rundown analysis of the percentages which we use in winning each of the faculties. And immediately, somebody shouted, let us go to student affairs. This was at about 1 a.m. in the morning. We marched to student affairs that evening, and the then dean of students, a professor of botany, Professor McDonald, fortunately was just coming out from his office to enter his vehicle to go home, and we blocked his vehicle and we said, Dean sir, an error has been made by the student affairs. I now reminded him of the quote of Frantz Fanon, that errors left uncorrected will become immorality. I was to that extent, my dean, you have to look at these results again. So he called the collation officer. Finally, they were still within the student affairs premises. They were all brought back and decided calculating one after the other, adding up the results. And to the surprise of everybody, what my agent reported was the correct result. And the dean immediately apologized to me. But meanwhile, my opponent was already celebrating the hostel. They were already a fanfare. And it was not a case of immediately he ordered that the results should be torn. The results should be torn. And when the results will now be retrieved from the different hostels, he now ordered that that same result, the correct result of my election, should now be taken back to the hostel and pasted on the notice board. Now, University of Benin students became confused. Who is now the director of sports? Now, I was also worried because, you see, I came into the race as an underdog. My opponent had the goodwill of the most of the stakeholders. Fortunately, even the nurse comrades then in school. So I was also anxious to see the outcome. So on the day of the swearing-in, University of Benin students said they were going to the swearing not because they wanted to witness the swearing of the president. Finally, the first female president, they wanted to know who University of Benin will now swear in as the director of sports of the student union. And that morning, I got ready because I was not sure what to expect. I told my friends that they should wait for me in the hostel. Let me get to the Senate chambers first, because then that was where the swearing would normally take place. That when I'm not sure I am the director of sport to be sworn in, I will invite them over. So that in case I end up not being the one to be sworn in, the shame will not be much. At least it will just be within me alone.
Yeah.
So I got there, and the dean shared the list of executives to be sworn in. Unfortunately, it was my name that was there. I was not convinced that I was the one to be sworn in.
Was your opponent?
West.
Was David Emmanuel? Was he there? Was it?
He was not present.
Oh, okay.
He was not present at the swearing in.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps maybe the student affair would have also notified him in writing.
Yeah.
Because that evening I got a call from the then student affair desk officer for student union. That's he's now a deputy registrar, John Osagi.
Okay.
That I should make myself available at 9 a.m. at the Senate chamber for me to be sworn in as director of sport. And I said, no problem, I'll be there. So perhaps maybe it's that call that he didn't get that made him not to come there. Yeah. So we were sworn in, and University of Benin students actually waited for the pictures, those that couldn't make it. And when they saw the pictures of the swearing, I was now labeled as one of the most controversial executives of the student union, because for the first time we had two results. Unfortunately, the dean that evening also acknowledged that it was a mathematical error on the part of those who did the collation.
Yeah.
So that was all. And my tenure.
Yeah.
I could.
Let's talk about your tenure. What can you say was the most significant policy or programs that you held as director of sports?
Yes, upon my swearing in, I took my mind back, because the only time we've had somebody from sports science department, because part of the argument of some of my senior colleagues over the years was that if law produces Attorney General of the Student Union, we know Director of Finance has become almost by convention the exclusive right of those in the management sciences. Then Director of Sports should be left for those who studied human kinetics.
Then those of us that study political science should be the president.
Yes, that will always be the argument. So, but unfortunately, you can have your say, but the system will always have its way.
Yes.
While I was coming into office, I already knew that I was going to be the second person from that department. So all eyes were on me.
Look, who was the first, please?
The man that used to be that is still in AIT, Callisto Somofawa Evare. He captained the Uniben football team during the WAU 95.
Oh, okay.
So yes, I was the second from that department. So it was one that I needed to live above board, and also ensure that whatever I'm doing, I will leave a legacy behind for those that will come after me from that department, so that there could be something to refer to.
Yes, and the agitation should be witty then.
Yes, and one of the things that I think was the hallmark of my achievement in office was the struggle for the athletes' rights in University of Benin. I could remember on one occasion, University of Benin students were taken to a championship in faraway Calabar, and the then director of sports failed to notify me because there was this style of just taking athletes once there's an approval from the school. The student union director of sport will not be involved because they know that if there is any issue of inequality in terms of allowances and all of that, that the student union representative is capable of fueling agitation. And to that extent, they left for Calabar, and I was not told. Meanwhile, these athletes, before my arrival, were not even paid their allowances. And I was told by one of the athletes via phone call that they are in Calabar now. They are surprised that I'm not here with them. And I said I was not aware. Finally, we had a then vice chancellor who was also supportive of the student union government, Professor Oji Oshodi, and also passionate about sports. So I took the dean that afternoon, myself and the dean, we walked up to the vice chancellor and said, look at the director of sports who was supposed to join the university delegation was not included, and immediately said, do whatever you have to do to be in Calabar the next morning. And by 5 a.m. the next morning, I set out to Calabar, and as soon as I arrived the camp of University of Benin delegation, there was this wide jubilation, and on asking questions, what was the jubilation about? They said they will not be paid their allowances. And immediately I arrived, I told the director of sport, the then director of sport, that, Oga, pay these people their allowances here now. You cannot tell them, you are not taking them to a competition, and they don't even know how much you are going to be paid. They will get back, then you pay them whatever you deem fit. That will not be good enough. If that has been the old order, it should stop now. Even before leaving the university premises, they should be paid their allowances. And immediately, they will pay their allowances. And, because we were also carrying some of these, our Marxian ideas with respect to the struggle. I was offered to stay in the hotel where the officials were saying. I said, no, I was going to sleep in the same hotel with my people. That if they are sleeping inside a cubicle, I will sleep with them. So they will know I share their concern and I am with them, not just in spirit, but in action. So that was all. And then finally, it happened that it was in my time that University of Benin was now planning to host the 23rd NUGA Games. Yes, and in fact, my participation in the committee towards the build-up of the games actually also expanded my perception about why I should choose sports as a career. upon graduation, because it opened my eyes to some of the career opportunities that we never thought existed. Perhaps when we now got to 400 level, they were now being discussed, but they now made more meaning to us, particularly to me, because I had a first-hand experience of this opportunity. For example, sports marketing. It was during the 23rd NUGA Games I knew the potentials, the prospects of being a sports marketer. Even sports financing, sports management. So all of these, even journalism in sports. So it was the 23rd NUGA Games that actually opened my mind into these various career opportunities of sports. So by the time I was now coming back for masters, I already knew what I was doing, what the future I was going to be seeing upon completion of my master's program in sports management, because I was already part of a process that brought this career into practice.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about you are currently the sporting director of HIT Athletic Club.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe. Okay, there are some persons in the sporting cycle that talk about grassroots sports, how it's not as promising as it used to be. We know back then we used to have the Principal's Cup. Let's football specifically now. We used to have the Principal's Cup. We used to have the Shell Cup. We had other tournaments. They were like breeding ground for the bigger boys to come and watch and groom the younger talent. But these days we do not have such. We might have such competition, but they are not as publicized or as followed as it used to be. Because I remember that I played for my school then for Share Cup. Yes, I played just once. Then it was I was gearing up for it. It was what I wanted. I wanted to participate. The whole momentum was up there. But today we do not have such followership or such competitions. And if we even look at it at the bigger level, for example, the Nigerian football team, we do not have the progression. Saying players who are participating in this tournament maybe played for one or two clubs in the Nigerian Football League before going to Europe. We do not have this progression. Most of these players, which is absolutely fine if we get players from abroad to just come to the team. They are Nigerians and they have every right to play for Nigeria. But before now, we used to have this progression where I've played with this particular player for quite some years because we have played in the same league. We came out from the same youth system, and there's this bond, there's this togetherness that actually brings to sports. Sports is a team game. So, what do you think? Where have we gotten it wrong with our grassroots sports development? That today we do not have, we do not have the results that we used to have before from grassroots sports.
Yes, thank you very much, my brother. You see, the issue of sports development in Nigeria, like my professor and my teacher rightly said that we have a development without a compass, which means our sports development today is not directional. You see, if you take your mind back to the glorious days of Nigerian sports in the early 90s, in the 80s, these persons who brought glory to the nation through sports were products of school sports.
Yeah.
Persons like Stevie Keshi, name them. About the bulk, over 90% of the players who represented Nigeria in the 94 World Cup were a product of the school sports before they were eventually discovered by the various clubs like Nigeria back and all of that.
Yeah.
Look at the team that went to Barcelona 92 from Nigeria. That was one of the Olympics that Nigeria, first of all, made its mark as the giant of sports in Africa, where we had the likes of, what's her name now? We used to call her the Queen of Tracks.
Okay.
Mariam Magbemi,
Yeah.
Mariam Magbemi Oyali, and all of you, the Ezinwa brothers. You see, they were all products of school sports. Now, if you even look at it was the same team that transited into the 98 World Cup and the 1996 Olympics. And from Sydney 2000, from the Korea Japan 2002 World Cup, Nigerian sports started witnessing diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Now, what has actually happened to our sports is that, you see, when you don't pay close attention to the grassroots, which is the foundation of any sporting endeavor across the world, then you will get it wrong at the top. Just for example now, like the Spanish team that won the 2010 World Cup in South Africa.
Yeah.
If you watch that team was the same team which we also defeated at the under 17 level.
Yes. Yes.
This same team was also defeated at the under 20 level.
Yeah.
But you see, the Spanish Football Federation were not interested in winning laurels. What they were interested in at that level, they were interested in development, developing this player, molding this player. And by the time they got to the national team level, they were not comparable with their contemporaries from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
People like Fabregas and all of them.
Yeah.
Now the same thing happened to Nigeria. If you look at the team that went to the World Cup in 94, most of them were products of the Japan, Saudi 85, then Mauritius 93, and they transferred their talent into the national team. So you cannot rule out grassroots developments in every sports development. But today we don't have all of that, because most of these persons most of these bodies, organizations that used to sponsor these competitions, most of them have also withdrawn because of the perceived poor administration of sports, poor management of sports in Nigeria. Whereby a sponsor brings us a certain amount of money to do XYZ. The organizers will do SY and leave Z out. As a sponsor, you will not be happy.
Yeah.
And also, another thing that also affected the trajectory of Nigerian sport is because that we have not been able to have a legislated policy document for sports. The first national sports policy was in 1989, and thereafter we had the 2009 national sports policy. And in that document, normally nations who take sports as important business, they review their sports policy after every Olympics.
So
But you can imagine, from the last policy document in 1989, it took us almost 2 decades to have another document. And you can imagine what would have happened to the talents that would have spanned through these years before a new policy came out. Now, a new policy was formulated. By the time we are returning back from the 2012, the London Olympics, there would have been need for us to review this document, but nothing was done until in 2021, where the then Minister of Sport, Dari also, brought out the another policy. But if you look at all of these policies, none of them has become an act of its own. Most nations in the world today, what they have, we don't really have a policy. They don't have policy document. They have a sports act, because it is legislated, it is passed into law, and it is assented to by the president. So you see what the sports act does for you is that it gives penalties. That, for example, there are infringement, there are violations of social parts of the act, there will be punishment attached to it. But when you don't have punishment, you don't have punitive measures put in place, it will naturally be that a particular item will naturally be abused. That's what has happened to Nigerian sports. So until unless we have a policy document that is legislated. For example, the 2009 document states that 5% of the local government allocation must go to sports development. But the question I would dare to ask here now, How many of our local government are doing that? What you see is that at the end of the year, they will gather some youth, just throw 50,000 to them, one organize the chairman's cup.
Yeah.
Whereas
Are they
it is supposed to be
Are they even aware?
a right. That is the question. They are not even if they are aware, you cannot hold the local government by the jugular because it is not a law yet. It is only when it is a law that you cannot challenge them in cause of competent jurisdiction. That this is what you are supposed to do, but you are not doing it. Where is the money? Just imagine 5% from each local government goes into sports development yearly in each of the over 300 local government area in Nigeria. What will sports look like? But what we have is that the body now is resting more in the state and the federal government. So it's becoming too heavy for them to carry. And there's little they can do. It is the local government that actually should facilitate and sponsor grassroots sports development. Now you talked about the issue, my being sporting director of the HIT Athletics Club. You see, finally, that club is one of the clubs that has also produced the athletes that are giving Nigeria glory in almost a decade now. People like Ese Brume. Ese Brume was discovered by the coaches of that club. Kayode Yaya, who is currently the national team jumps coach. Then Chima Oswagu, who is an hurdles coach with the Edo State Sports Commission. These were persons who came together because of the need to contribute their quota towards sports development. They decided to put their skills together to form the HIT Athletics Club. Fortunately, this same club has produced athletes at the professional and the cadet level, at the youth level, at the junior level, at the senior level. Ese Brume, Odele Tega, who represent Nigeria in the Rio Olympics. We have the likes of Christina Ochonogo, who was in the long jump event during the Paris Olympic with Ese Brume. Finally, the two of the three jumpers in the Paris Olympics for Nigeria at the female category in the were from this team. So it we could say that although we are not where we want to be yet, but we are gradually contributing our quota to the grassroots development of sports in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rashid. It has been wonderful. I know you can go on and on talking about sports, especially developmental sports. Thank you for creating time to be part of this show.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be part of your program.
Thank you.
Great Uniben.
Yeah, greatest. I've been speaking with Dr. Abdulrasheed Oyakhire. He's the Dean School of Physical and Health Education and Special Education, Edo State College of Education, Afuze Campus, and he's also a former director of sports, Student Union Government, University of Benin. Continue to subscribe to our channel, bringing more exclusive interviews with Uniben alumni. Bye for now.
1970, we sure we did the forefront. Knowledge for selfish, for sure we did the work. Auditorium to basement of all faculty of law.